Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're choosing to tune in. Just know we appreciate it. We are Full Disclosure, brought to you by DisclosedRx, and we're here breaking down what's happening in the PBM world to bring clarity to an otherwise opaque space. I'm Chris Estep, joined with me my co-host Andy Rodriguez. Collectively, we are directors of business development at DisclosedRx, and today we're talking about something that affects every employer in America, every broker in the industry, and honestly, anyone trying to navigate healthcare right now.
Because somewhere along the way, the broker job description completely exploded. 20 years ago, you needed a spreadsheet, a few carrier relationships, and maybe a decent golf game. Today, brokers are expected to understand PBMs, fiduciary liability, stop loss, AI, healthcare navigation, technology integrations, data analytics, compliance, and somehow still explain why somebody's urgent care claim got denied, usually before lunch.
Point, half the industry is one software update away from needing an IT certification, a law degree, or at least a group text with someone who has both. So today we brought on Winston Walters to talk about what the broker role actually looks like in 2026, why it has changed so dramatically, and what separates the brokers who are adapting from the ones who are getting left behind.
So just real quick, everything that you hear on this podcast reflects our personal opinions and then those of our guest, not DisclosedRx or any affiliated organization. We're simply here to share perspectives and spark conversation, not give any official guidance or advice.
Now, I always like to start here, Winston. Just introduce yourself, who you're with, your credentials, and just kind of let the people know who we brought on.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys for having me. I appreciate it. Winston Walters. I'm with Hub International. I am located in the beautiful town of Kalispell, Montana. If you watch Yellowstone, it's nothing like that. But we do have the beauty, and we do have some awesome Colorado mountains. I've been at Hub for 13 years next month. And yeah, the landscape has changed drastically over the last handful of years.
Perfect. And I think it's really something that people need to have. It's almost like a broker therapy session. Let the people vent, tell people who we are, because one thing that's become obvious over the last few years in health is that healthcare got significantly more complicated, while most people weren't really paying attention. Meanwhile, the broker role kept quietly expanding. What used to be an insurance conversation is now technology conversations, a pharmacy conversation, you add in compliance conversations, and sometimes, like I mentioned, a therapy session, but with spreadsheets. And I think employers are often surprised when they realize just how much has actually changed.
Winston, welcome to the show. And your first question is, you work primarily with employers under 500 lives. So what does that market actually feel like right now?
Yeah, good question. It feels like a vice. In your shop, you have the thing that cranks. That's exactly what it feels like right now. We're seeing 7 to 10% increases right now, just across the board. And a lot of employers are just left with a handful of options. Like, what do we do? Where do we go?
Yeah, totally understand that. But when did you first realize that being a broker wasn't enough anymore, Winston?
It was during COVID. So we had a lot of employers reaching out for, we want data analytics on our claims. I had some people reach out for masks and plastic things. I'm like, well, we don't do that, but we can help you with the other. They want more transparency, right? They're paying millions of dollars and they're getting very little transparency. So they're making decisions based with limited information with only a handful of options. And they want to see where their dollar's truly going.
Yeah, I agree. Let's say that if you were a broker from 2006 that walked into your office today, what would shock them the most about the job?
Probably the variety of products and knowledge that you have to know. It used to be just fully insured space, right? To your point, we have to know PBMs, we have to know compliance, we have to know tech. Like, there are so many other things that go into it than just spreadsheeting somebody and saying, here you go, good luck. I think that's the biggest thing. And the cool thing about Hub is that we have departments for each of that. So we have a tech department, that's all they do. We have a pharmacy department, that's all they do. So I don't have to necessarily know that. I just need to know who to connect the dots with for those people and give the handoff to those departments.
Right. What knowledge areas are now mandatory that weren't even part of the conversation 10 years ago that you just mentioned, Winston?
Um, a lot of the compliance pieces with ACA, the big beautiful bill, we have to disclose compensation now. Um, there's a lot of things that have changed, and it's just no longer a simple canned product. I think one of the biggest things is that, like, this is employers' data, this is their information, they're entitled to these claims. Um, we try to do a quarterly claims audit and see what's going on, see if we can't spot trends, see if we can't find a generic that could be maybe, versus brand. Um, I think a lot of that has just grown into the space. Like, I feel like sometimes I'm a pharmacist, sometimes I'm a doctor, and then other times I'm just a dad and a insurance broker. So there's a lot of different hats that have to be worn. And for a good broker to be that, they need to be a little dangerous in all the areas. They just can't be a one trick pony.
Yeah, I think 2026 is a definite interesting landscape for brokers in this space now. Let's start with technology because this is where I see one of the biggest gaps. What does a modern broker need to understand about technology that many still don't, Winston?
I think the biggest thing is that there are companies designed just for payroll. They're designed just for pharmacy analytics. And you can go to those individually, or you can go to a broker or somebody like Hub that has access to all those, that has preferred pricing too at a national level. We don't want our insureds running around trying to figure out who's on first, who's on second. We want you to come to us, and we have all those tools. Those relationships are built, like, it's tried and true. I think that's a big piece of it. The other thing is, like, the generations are changing. Like, we're not seeing SBCs in paper form anymore. We're not doing paper enrollments. Employees want apps that can track their deductible. They want access to carriers to talk to, a teledoc. Like the landscape has changed, and a lot of that is remote now. And for those companies that are behind on those technologies and those pieces, they're missing the boat.
You brought up a good point, and as mentioned, what's something that's become a little bit more normal of a broker's job today that would have sounded completely ridiculous 10 years ago?
I think I think the space of other companies and other businesses trying to wedge into the employer space, where you do have to be versatile. You do have to have a lot of different avenues for people to access that information. We can't just rely on a Blue Cross. I don't know if I can say that or not, but we can't just rely on companies to do that for us. Like, we have to be the bridge, we have to be the gap, we have to equip them with the tools and knowledge of knowing where to go when this happens. Uh, Far too often, brokers set down a renewal, or they set down a quote and they walk away and they're inaccessible. To me, that's not appropriate, right? Like, we're here for you. We're here to help you figure out point A to Z. And a lot of times, brokers that I have found aren't able to connect those dots well or timely, and that's what employers are looking for.
Yeah, and technology is only one piece of this because the brokers aren't just expected to understand the systems, they're expected to understand the strategy, right? And that's where things start getting really interesting because knowing the system on one thing, surviving the plot twists is another. One thing I've noticed is that the most successful brokers today aren't really necessarily the best salespeople. No shade to anyone, but they're the ones who can connect the dots, as you've mentioned. They understand how a decision in one area affects five other areas. And honestly, that's a completely different skill set than the industry traditionally rewards. It's like the Glengarry Glen Ross more money ball with compliance issues.
Yeah, and honestly, right, one thing that and a good example of missing the boat here, I mean, PEOs. Brokers either avoid this conversation or they've traditionally just handled it badly. Some, not all. So where do you stand, and what do brokers get wrong most often?
Um, I think the mindset of the PEO is the magic bullet, or the one stop shop, is a dangerous place to be. Um, there are a lot of good PEOs out there. There's a lot of employers that don't want to relinquish that much control.
Mm.
Um, and some HR people I talked to, when I brought in a PEO, they said, "Well, this will put me out of a job." And in some instances, yes, it will, because there's a lot of HR function, a lot of compliance, a lot of payroll, things like that that they can do. Um, but knowing which levers to pull and when is a big thing. And I think just the blanket band-aid of a PEO can be a very dangerous, slippery slope. PEOs have changed quite a bit. They have become more broker friendly. Like, we used to hate them because they'd offer their payroll service and then they say, hey, if you broker over your benefits, we'll give you a cut on the payroll side. And so brokers didn't like that. And to be fair, like, they're not brokers, right? Like, this is all we do in this space is healthcare. So it has its time, it has its place. It's not for everybody. And for an employer to think it's going to be their one-stop cure-all can be very dangerous.
Absolutely. It's almost like in the pharmacy benefit space, the term transparency. I mean, that's kind of like the blanket that protects all of them, right? It's ridiculous. But another term that has come up a lot, not necessarily in just the PBM space, but data literacy. The industry says it consistently, but really no one's ever defines it. Hey, you know what actually does tie into transparency? What does a genuinely data literate broker look like in practice?
I think two areas is one, again, back to being the pharmacist or the doctor, like, we need to know what's a one-off claim, what's a shop loss, what's a one-time event that sometimes carriers and markets will say, we're going to carry this through the end of the year. But it's a premature pregnancy, it's a NICU visit. Those are one-offs. We're not having those all the time. Typically, triple bypass, that's a one-off. We're not having that all the time. And while they are big, high-dollar ticket items, they should be looked at as a one-off. I think also with the pharmacy piece, like, employers don't know what they don't know, right? Like, they typically don't know the difference between a brand and a generic. It's the same exact formula. One is branded, one is not, and one's a third of the cost. I just think that we're doing employers a disservice at times, giving them the data. They don't know what they're looking at. They're seeing, the XYZs of the alphabet soup prescriptions. It might as well be Latin, which it primarily is. They don't know what that means. And so to hand them that report with very little insight is doing a disservice. I think the biggest places we see our analytics team coming through is at renewal time. So we're tracking the analytics. We're looking at the pharmacy spend the whole entire time, and we can justify this renewal is too high, and here's why, or we can say, yeah, that's fair. That makes sense.
No, really well said. And I think kind of leads me to this next part because we talked about where people are missing the boat. When you look across the industry today, where are the biggest knowledge gaps?
I think employers have gotten so used to having a canned product. The pharmacies here, like, everything's all in one spot. But there are times where unbundling makes a lot of sense. Yes, it is some more work, but typically that pays in spades on the back end, because if we can set the stop loss here with this carrier, if we can do pharmacy with this one, carve out, like, we can get creative if the employer is on board and understands what that means.
Totally agree. I think there's angles there that some folks are just saying, well, the it's been this way forever. Let's keep it that way forever. You have to adapt to this. Is there a skill brokers need today that would have sounded completely ridiculous 10 years ago?
I think not resting on your laurels is a big one. We have to be up to date on what's happening in Congress. We have to be up to date with what drugs are coming to the market if there's competition on them. GLP-1 is another great example. I mean, they used to be several $1,000s, and that price is coming down because those patents have come off. Competition's coming into the workplace, and we're really seeing, like, competition, good, healthy competition. I think staying up to date on trends, staying up to date on what's coming down the pipeline from an administrative standpoint. You can't just sit back and look at your renewals the second you get them and throw them out there. Like, you have to be up to date on what's happening right now. And what we're seeing in this industry as a whole is that 500 and under space, they're getting smoked right now. I
Yeah.
mean, like, you have to find some other solutions, whether that's alternative funding or a captive or a consortium or a trust. Like, you cannot just be passive in this arena. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short, is they've just done it that way for 30 years. That's how we're going to do it. And they're missing it.
Yeah, I mean, evolution doesn't stop. You have to find a way to adapt. And I think, what is, a question that I think nobody has asked, but it really should be asked. What does the employer typically get wrong about what they're entitled to from their broker? I mean, not necessarily like what the broker's getting wrong, but really what don't employers know to ask for or know that it's not necessarily the responsibility of?
That's a great question. I think they don't know what they don't know. So, you know, I've been asking my clients, like, what do you know about captives? What do you know about pharmacy management? What do you know about trust or consortium? What do you know about alternative funding? And 9 times out of 10, it's like, I've heard the word, I've seen it on LinkedIn or the news, and that's about all I know.
Mm.
So I really believe educating the employers with the vast array of products and services that are out there, making them feel comfortable and confident in a decision that they've done historically, just kind of laissez-faire. I think that knowledge is power, and the more information we can get, the more transparency we can get, and the more solutions that we can bring. It goes from a very one-sided conversation to opening it up to, wow, there's a lot of different possibilities out there. Um, for example, a major carrier just left Montana, and it's been incredibly impactful. And the employers I've talked to said, well, we only have one other option, right? And I'm like, no, like we have so many other options. It just is going to take time and investment on your part to learn what those look like and to get you to a comfort level that you're cool with, to make some of those choices. But by and large, employers don't know what else is out there because it's been the same thing since inception.
Very true. And I think it's, you never know what you just don't know. And a lot of people will go to LinkedIn and see a bunch of posts and think that that's the law or that is just what it is. And I think that's where reality starts colliding with expectations because employers are asking more questions, cost keeps rising, and brokers are getting judged on outcomes more than just relationships. So let's talk about the market. I mean, like I mentioned, not LinkedIn, not conference presentations, not somebody posting a beach photo with a healthcare quote underneath it, like they just solved trend management from Cabo. What is actually happening?
Yeah, let's get into the market with real renewal numbers, Winston. What are you actually seeing in 2026?
Yeah, it's nasty. It's ugly. It's that vice, right? Like we keep turning it. We're seeing right now 24% on average across the small group space.
Wow.
24% to a bottom line employer is a big number. And
Sure.
nothing got better. Deductibles didn't get better. Copays didn't get better. If anything, it's going the other way. I really think this is a result of the individual space, right? Like we're allowing conditions and things that have never been allowed before to be on there. I think we may be swinging back to kind of qualifying some risk that we didn't before. And unfortunately, healthcare is expensive. We're seeing average cost for an employer right now of $19,000 per head. So take that 19,000, multiply it by the number of your employees, and that's what we're seeing. Um, the GLP-1, everybody talks about the GLP-1. Like the price is coming down. We are seeing great benefits from it, from a lot of different angles. I'm type 1 diabetic. I've been diabetic for 38 years, and I'm on a GLP-1, and my numbers have never been better. My A1C has never been lower. My kidney,
Wow.
liver, heart function have never been better, and that's a byproduct of the GLP-1. So um, I think employers are just tired. They're just tired of getting the 10% increases, the 14s, the 24s, with having no other options. You wouldn't buy a TV or a car without trying out 3 or 4 or 5 other options. I don't know why we're not doing that with healthcare.
That brings up a really solid point. So the 2026 renewal season, what are the brokers walking into? And then why is this year so much vastly different than the previous ones?
I think again because of the funnel, because we have carriers pulling out. Aetna pulled out in New York, Provident
Good
pulled
point.
out, Pacific Source pulled out. Like the competition is getting smaller, and that can lead to free reign on pricing, right? Like if there's less competition, like we can charge whatever we want. I think there needs to be a lot of transparency around what providers charge versus what's paid versus the rebates and the back end stuff. I think that we've got to get to a point where people are accountable for those dollars and they want to know they're going to the right places.
The employers are frustrated right now, no doubt, and the renewals are pretty brutal out there for brokers. What does creative actually look like right now for brokers who want to offer something other than, I'm sorry, here's the higher deductible, which has become healthcare's version of thoughts and prayers, essentially?
I think it comes down to a lot of front end work, right? We need to either do health statements on people. We need to have Milliman or GRX run your script costs. Like if you want to try to save money, you got to put in the front end work. And I think there are options out there. There's captives. They're very picky about who they let in, so they screen it very well. But if you have a narrative or a story around why your claims are the way they are, they're more likely to look at that. Administration doesn't even begin to cover what they're dealing with. You know, we all thought ICRAs were going to be this great, amazing thing, and there is a time and place for it. But again, people are pulling out of the individual market. Where are you going to go?
Yeah.
I think a lot of employers are trying to take back control of a broken system that's heading for a cliff, and it is frustrating, and it is a lot of time investment of people up front. So if you're willing to work with me, we'll go to bat, we'll do the work, but it is going to take more than what has historically happened on a renewal cycle or preparing.
And I love that, which brings me to my next point, Winston. You've laid out several creative strategies. Is there a risk a broker tries all of them and masters none?
There is, and that's why we have teams, right? Like that's why we have our captive solutions. That's why we have our ICRA department. That's why we have our pharmacy team. I'm not the expert in all of them. I know a little bit enough that when I hear a certain word or something, I'm like, oh, I need to get my team in there. I think that's the other thing is that everybody tries to do everything really well, and in my experience, it doesn't work out great. So be efficient in the fully insured space. Be efficient in captives. There's so many other opportunities that people are missing because we're accepting the status quo, and I think employers are getting sick of accepting the status quo.
Yeah, but kind of leads me into this too. Do you think employers have gotten better at identifying the difference between innovation and distraction? Because healthcare has never exactly suffered from a shortage of shiny objects.
True. I think everybody's at the end of the rope, right? Like we've tried this, we've tried that. Nothing seems to be working. We're still getting 24% increases. Like, what do we do? And I think that's where it's a bigger conversation of pharmacy reform, transparency. One thing that I have thought of, like, I think there should be a set cost for procedures done. Like, why is a knee replacement in Kalispell, Montana, $3,000 and it's $18,000 in Seattle? Like, why is that? Help me understand that. I think if we had a set price across the board, and I think we would see some people really step up and agree that some of these are inflated costs.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's a key component to all of this. And ultimately, it leads to one question: who adapts? I mean, because every industry eventually reaches a point where the old playbook stops working, and then healthcare feels like it's entering that phase kind of right now.
I'll be biased here. I'm a millennial. I think the younger people are more in tune with what's going on with the technology coming down, with the different markets coming to place. Like I said, we can't rest on our laurels anymore. It's cutthroat out there. There's PEOs trying to get in the door. There's payroll trying to get in the door. And we really need to be up to speed on all of our carrier options. But I think that gone is the day of shopping it out to 2 or 3 carriers and not bringing any other solutions. It's not going to be for everybody. Some companies won't even allow pharmacy carve out to a certain size. But there are some solutions out there that make sense for a lot of people if they're willing to put in the work, figure it out, and work with your broker or partner to find a solution that fits your needs.
Yeah, but for me too, for our listeners as well, this conversation really isn't about insurance. It's about relevance. because the brokers who continue to grow over the next decade probably won't look much like the brokers who succeeded over the last decade.
And I think, once it kind of brings up a question I have, which is, how many brokers in your market are that you can kind of see are going to actually make this transition versus the ones who are going to quietly get replaced and then never really understand why?
I'm seeing more of the ones that are doing this type of stuff more than the ones that aren't. Again, it seems to be a bit of an age thing. But Hub has invested a lot into these tiers, these arms of service, these arms of pharmacy, and Claude even. Like, we've invested big in Claude. We're trying to get in front of this as much as we can, and those people or those small brokerages that don't have the horsepower or bandwidth or financials to do that, I think they're going to be obsolete sooner than later.
Absolutely. I mean, it kind of brings up this question. I'm a big sports fan. I always have the image of the coach's rolled up playbook in his back pocket, right? If you're a broker starting another brutal renewal cycle and you know that old crinkly playbook is no longer enough, what's your first move?
Set it on fire, chuck it. If it's not broken, don't fix it, but it's broken. So we got to figure out a new way to go about it. And that a lot of that's collaborative, right? So Hub has 20,000 employees in all 50 states. Like, we're talking to brokers in New York. What are you seeing or doing over there? We're talking to brokers in Seattle and Dallas. What do you see trending? What are you doing that's working? And I think the nationwide collaboration is what's really driving a lot of the things and resources and tools and partners that we're working with, to bring those to small town America.
Yeah, and think collaboration. I love that in this space. It's seldomly utilized. I'm glad to see it actually starting to change. I think that's a really perfect place to really start to zoom out a bit, because underneath all these conversations is a bigger theme. The role itself is changing. One thing that really stood out to me throughout this entire conversation is that the broker role has absolutely gotten harder. But maybe even more than that, it's gotten a lot wider. The old broker had to know insurance. The modern broker has to know insurance, pharmacy, compliance, technology, data strategy, and probably a few things that hasn't even been invented yet. So basically, the job posting now reads like someone who's merged three departments and has now labeled it as growth, right? And all employers don't always realize that. They still think they're hiring someone to negotiate rates, when in reality, they're hiring someone to help navigate an increasingly complicated.
Winston, do you think?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that's a great comment. I often think that there's a misconception that brokers work for the carriers. We don't work for the carriers. We work for you, the employer. We're agnostic in that regard. And if we think something is a good fit, or this market is a good fit, regardless of whatever else our own agenda is, like, that's our job to you as the employer. I think that can be a misconception at times too. We're not going to selfishly put you with a carrier service that pays more or better commissions. Like, that's not what we're about. We're about finding a solution that makes sense for you and your employees, that you can be confident and happy with, that you offer a decent benefit package that you can be proud of.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And shout out to the good brokers who are actually doing that on behalf of the employers. Do you think employers fully appreciate how much the role has changed, Winston?
My instant answer is no. Again, they think we're on the golf course 6 months out of the year, hobnobbing, and there is a little bit of that. But I think I think if you want to be up to speed, like, you can't take a day off right now. Like, things are changing so fast. Markets are coming and going so fast that if you're asleep at the wheel, you're going to be left in the dust.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think what separates brokers who are going to thrive over the next decade from those who won't?
Back to the quarterback or the sports analogy, it's the quarterback that can place the right people, the right teams in places to make it work. Those lone wolves, those people that are trying to do it all on their own, they just can't. They don't have the bandwidth, capacity, or knowledge, and that's no fault of their own. It's just gotten so big that you have to have specialty practices where you know who to call.
Yep, that's right. In closing here, Winston, is there anything you want to plug in on behalf of you and Hub International? Now's your time to shine, my friend.
It's an exciting time personally because, to your point, we're going to see agents rise or fall right now. We're going to see markets come and go. Like, there's a lot of really good opportunity for people to get in front of this and get creative, where in the past it's been very sitting on your laurels, like I said, relying on the easy stuff that's always worked. I think we're going to see some markets rise and some companies thrive, and I think we're going to see others be crippled because they're scared, or they're not as innovative, or they're not investing in those teams and those services. And Hub is really, really big on investing in that stuff.
Well said, Winston. As a seasoned professional in this space, seriously, thank you for joining us today. Because this conversation really isn't about brokers. It's about the complexity of employers facing, how the people advising them have to evolve along with it. And honestly, one of the biggest takeaways from today is the best brokers aren't just shopping insurance anymore. They're helping employers navigate a healthcare system that gets more complicated every year. And whether it's PBMs, compliance, technology, self-funding, or data strategy, the common thread is that employers need somebody who cannot connect the dots, or that can connect the dots. And maybe most importantly, it reminds us that healthcare expertise today looks very different than it did 10 years ago. And as always, if you're an employer or a broker listening to this, the takeaway is simple. You don't need all of the answers, but you do need visibility. So if something doesn't make sense, it's probably worth digging into. And we'll keep helping you dig. This is Full Disclosure, where Andy Rodriguez and Chris Estep talk soon.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.